In today's podcast, we're speaking with Bruce Lesser. Bruce is a man who wears many hats. First, he's been a volunteer reserve policeman for over 45 years in the San Francisco East Bay area. He also works for a large California public utility as a code enforcement officer. And lastly, he's a very successful realtor where he's been operating for over 40 years. Welcome to the podcast, Bruce.
Hey, Matthews. Thank you for having me. This is awesome.
Awesome for joining us, and I realize it looks like you're on the job today.
I'm on the job, man. I'm wearing a public utility hat, which is hat number 3, I guess.
Okay.
And so we'll see how it goes. I got the scanner on. If it gets too noisy here, just tell me to turn it down.
Okay. I realize you're on the job. You got to be listening. First, I gave a brief introduction of you, but I'd rather you tell us a little about your career and your background.
Well, I consider myself a senior citizen now at this point in life. Went to San Diego State and thought I was going to be a cop full time after I graduated. But lo and behold, I had a medical issue with the back that showed up on an x-ray that cost me my career in law enforcement. And fortunately, I was already a volunteer reserve cop up in Northern California, and I was able to maintain that, and here I am 45 years later still working the streets for that agency. So anyway, I couldn't become a cop on a full-time basis because of this back issue, evidently. So I went back to Northern California. My uncle had a small real estate company, and he basically felt sorry for me, offered me an opportunity to work for him. I did, got my license, my real estate license, and fast forward 40 plus years later, that's my bread and butter, selling real estate over here in the East Bay as well. Not too long ago, I decided to, since I had a little bit more extra time, since my daughter joined me to help me out with the business, I went to work for this public utility as a code enforcement officer, and loving that. Having my daughter work with me freed me up to do this. I'm out here playing patrol officer for this utility right now, and that's where I am today. No sign of retiring at this point.
No sign. You have been a volunteer policeman for 45 years.
Yeah.
Never earned a nickel.
Never, not a penny. Crazy, I know. Yeah, my wife thinks I'm nuts.
And I think you've been married for 40 plus years as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, 41 coming up in August.
See, so in this day and age where marriages don't last and people don't stick at jobs, you've been doing a job and not getting paid for 45 years.
That's right.
You then have a very successful marriage, and then you 40 years in the real estate business, and then taking on this work as in code enforcement. Many hats there, Bruce. Many hats. I'm impressed.
Well, the code enforcement thing came late in life, but generally speaking, the police thing was always a night deal, and it is a night shift sort of thing. Real estate's always a daytime sort of thing. So I had one person once say, Bruce, with this police thing and real estate thing, it seems like you kind of kiss ass by day and kick ass at night, and that kind of describes in a nutshell, those two different hats for sure.
Wow. You're one of the most interesting people I've talked to, so thank you.
Oh, please.
Could you talk a little bit about the differences? My podcast is about communication. A lot of times we talk about presentations, but yours is less about presentations, but more communications. And could you talk a little bit about the differences in communications at the police department versus your real estate business? I'd imagine they're quite different.
They are different, but it's amazing how they interplay with each other in certain ways. And what I mean by that is when it comes to just communicating with people, whether it's in real estate or on the streets as a cop, at the end of the day, you just treat people with respect. The good old golden rule pretty much applies when wearing both those hats. In the police department, we go through a lot of training. It's continuous training year after year after year, and we repeat the same things. A lot of it has to do with crisis intervention, de-escalation techniques, conflict resolution, learning how to interpret body language of the audience, the suspect, if you will, when you're dealing with police work. Command presence, developing a certain command presence when you are communicating. So, a lot of that Not all of it, but a lot of it I can carry into the real estate field as well.
One of the things, and I had a career in software sales and pre-sales, and one of the things that I felt was important was this concept I have of suspension of distrust. And the idea is when I'm working with a prospective customer, they see you as a salesperson, there's a natural distrust. And I
Yes.
work to earn their trust. And I work to have them, instead of seeing me as a salesperson, more as a colleague helping them to solve a business problem. Do you, in terms of suspension of distrust, or at least breaking down those barriers that when you're working with people to see you as just a regular person rather than somebody that they need to keep at arm's length?
That's right. That's an interesting point. That relates heavily to the relationship that I have with my daughter now, my oldest daughter, who works with me, and we've actually branded ourselves as the father-daughter team. We're known in the real estate world here in the East Bay as the father-daughter team. And I can't tell you how much that breaks the ice when you meet people for the first time, whether they come through an open house or walk in the office and you meet them for this first time, and you introduce yourself as, "Hey, I'm the dad. This is my daughter. We're the dad-daughter team." It really breaks the ice, and especially with women customers, quite frankly, they really feel a sense of comfort when they hear that.
I was looking at your website in kind of preparation for this call. I was noticing there's a cool photo of your daughter Amanda right hand side, you on the left, and I think you might even had your dog in the
Oh
photo.
yeah,
It was like it was like a fun photo that
yeah,
kind of makes you, hey, I'd like to work with these people. It's, as opposed to kind of the traditional state photo, a person in a suit, taken in a studio. This just looked like it looked like these are cool people that I'd like to spend some time with.
well, that's encouraging, Matt, because that was sort of the whole intention behind that photograph and others that we've taken. None of them are in a studio. They're all out in the field, out in the street. And they always have my dog present. And speaking of the dog is now a new element to our communications and the way we've branded ourselves. The dog is actually part of our branding now. She's on our water bottle. She's on our business cards, on our stationery, on our website. And she's actually featured in every one of our listings. Our photographer, we have a professional photographer come in and photograph all of our listings like all realtors do. And in each room, our dog is such a ham that she takes a position the minute the photographer sets up the equipment. She's already working. She's taking a position for the next shot. She's gotten so good at being the star in these shots that she's actually gone viral on some of our listings where we've gotten close to 200,000 views just because of her.
I've seen some of the shots and the videos, and I think even in Instagram, kind of show a little bit of behind the scenes of getting the shots. I thought
Yeah.
that was very cool. So it sounds like you've taken some really creative ways in your real estate business to bond with your customers.
Yeah, it's all about getting attention, I think, getting attention of the audience, of the customer, and holding their attention. So, and it kind of relates to police work. When you're going on a call and dealing with a hostile environment where emotions are high, and especially when people are confrontational to the police, you need to win people over right away too. A communication under pressure is I've certainly learned that at the police level for sure.
They gave you training. The police department give you a lot of training and recurring training as well.
Yeah, we go through so much. We've even gone breaking it down to very specifics, down to people with learning how to interact with people with autism and how to do, to assess somebody when you're pulling up on a call. Don't immediately assume that they're somebody that's high on drugs or has a mental disorder. We've had very specific training for autism, but we also learn things like body language with people. One interesting thing I've learned with body language that really resonated with me, watching a lot of videos where body cam footage of officers making contact with people during traffic stops, where the person ultimately turns on the officer. And in a lot of the cases, the people start fidgeting. They'll start just instinctively start putting their hands through their hair, things like that. There's these cues that people give you prior to attacking the officer. And watching body language in real estate too, you're paying attention to your audience in real estate, your clients. Are they paying attention? Are they getting bored?
You remind me a number of years ago. I was driving. I was on a business trip. I was in a rental car, wearing a business shirt, press shirt, no tie, and I got pulled over by a highway patrol guy in another state.
Yeah.
And he walked up and I just explained, hey, this is a rental car. I showed him the stuff, the rental agreement, and he was okay, fine. And I don't know, we started talking, but he could tell that I was not a bad guy. So I mean, he said he could see people's heart rate through their shirt. And he says, when you pull over a guy who's got two strikes, and this can be their third strike, he says he can see their heart racing. And he was big on picking up the visual cues. And they explained that the license plate was askew on the back of the car, and I needed to tell Hertz to straighten it out. But his whole thing was reading
Huh.
me, and am I a threat? And I was like, literally, you could tell. And he says, absolutely. Because he says, the bad guys don't wave a flag saying, hey, I'm a bad guy, pull me over. So he saw that the license plate was slightly off, and if that gave him probable cause to pull me
Yep.
over, there was no issue there, and I went on my way. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Now you told me that you had worked undercover many years ago. How did you find that experience? Taking on a different persona. Imagine just the communication process there. Kind of to tell me a little bit about the process of taking on a different persona.
Well, that was a long time ago. That's when I first came on as a cop, and it was back in the late '70s, early '80s, and that's when cocaine was prevalent all throughout actually the country. And so the department looked at me, being a young guy with long hair and with hair back then. Go figure. They thought this might be an opportunity to put this guy out on the streets in an undercover capacity, and I did. And I primarily worked drug enforcement, primarily cocaine uh, interdiction, and had to embed myself with criminal organizations. And it's interesting. I never was into acting. I had never even dreamed of ever doing anything like this, but I think it's the closest thing to becoming, for an actor, being an actor. Looking back, I felt like I was just an actor. I was
Wow.
being somebody I wasn't, and saying things and acting in certain ways that I would never do in my real personal life. So,
I remembered once in the past talking to a policeman, and he had mentioned domestic disturbances, husband and wife issues were for
yeah,
him at the time kind of the worst ones because there's so many things that can go wrong in those types of circumstances as well. Do you have any skills as far as de-escalating those situations and you know dealing with a husband or wife who is or they're both, I guess, really ticked off at each other? How do you deal with those domestic disturbances?
yeah. Well, it's true. What you hear, those are the most unpredictable calls we go to. And the key really to success, I believe, is don't pick sides. Show up and don't pick sides, and isolate the parties as quickly as you can. Don't pick sides, and try to learn by interviewing them quickly but separately what's going on. As long as they're isolated, you generally it'll be uneventful, and you'll figure out what's going on. You'll figure out who the culprit is, who hit who and who started it. But
Wow.
the key is don't pick sides.
Tell us a little bit about real estate communications. What creative approaches have you taken in your real estate business?
Boy, I've been doing this a long time. I've tried so many things. I've the standard fare, newsletters, publishing newsletters, postcards, mailing postcards. Actually, I find that, and I still do postcards, by the way. I don't do newsletters, but postcards I've been doing for years and years and years. And just mailing a postcard every month to my sphere of influence has been a tremendous opportunity for me. But also, I've done sort of creative things like I published some shtick where it's called "Where's Bruce," and I would go into my community and take photographs or have photographs of me in random spots in my community, but very obvious spots in my community. I'd have a wide angle shot taken of me, maybe like, for example, with the train station behind me, and I would crop that way down to where there's just enough information in the background. You'd see me in the foreground, but in the background, there was just enough information. If you were a local person, you could probably figure out where's Bruce. And people had to email me to find out the answer. So they would go to my website. Every month they'd see, where's Bruce? They'd see a picture of Bruce standing somewhere in my community, and they would try to figure out where I am. They would email me with their answer, and I would break the news to them um, on whether they figured it out or not. And then, of course, Madeline introducing my dog to the business and branding my entire business around the dog, um,
Right.
has been a huge boost for us. That dog single-handedly, just by communicating her on our signs, our stationery, she has literally drawn business to us just because people thought that was really cute, and they liked the dad-daughter element to it too. So I'm killing two birds with one stone: a dog and a dad and daughter team. I mean, come on.
And it really feels like you do a lot of things to help you stand out as not just another real estate person, but and I believe you play on the fact that you've been selling or been a realtor in the area for over 40 years. You've got a ton of experience. How has the work with the police influenced your real estate? Is
Oh
there a
man,
cause and effect between the two?
wow, yeah, that's Matt. That's an unintended consequence. Here I've been a volunteer for 45 years, and I've got to say that my real estate business, I would say roughly 75% of it is somehow connected to my association with law enforcement. So this volunteer police experience that I've stuck with all these years. The unintended consequence was a boom to my business. And I think what happened is I maintain, I like to think I'm a good citizen. I'm a loyal employee. I'm a team player. And I think a lot of people in the law enforcement community see this. And when it comes time to look for a realtor, I get phone call. I got 2 phone calls yesterday from cops that want to sell their house. So my message to young realtors, by the way, and I vocalize this to so many people, especially young realtors, and that is volunteer, find something that you love, a passion, something that you don't have to get paid to do it. Just go volunteer and go do it. And your intent shouldn't be to make money off of it, but if you're a good person and you stick with the program and volunteerism, I think is a huge business opportunity. Really, God, for anybody, I would imagine. So it's worked for me.
Oh yeah, I'm a passionate road cyclist here in the Atlanta area, and so I've gotten to know dozens upon dozens of cyclists. And if I were a real estate agent, I'd like to hope that they would think of me as someone if they were to be looking for a
Yes.
house.
Yep.
I know that there's a lot of networking events out there, but a lot of them feel like they're just networking for the sake of networking. Is okay, everybody passing out business cards, but there's no real fundamental heart and soul to it. But what you're doing, the volunteer work, is what allows you to have kind of a substantive foundation for what you're doing. You love what you're doing. You've been doing it for 45 years. Is there anyone in the department who's been there as long as you?
No. Nobody's that
Not
nuts.
even
Come on.
close. Let's see. Last thing I wanted to touch upon, I think you ran for public office many years ago,
Yeah,
if I
back in
understand.
the mid '90s. Yes, I did.
How did you find that experience, public speaking wise? Did you have to get up, get any speeches, or get involved in any debates, anything like that?
Yeah, boy, that was a whole new experience for me. I ran for a city council seat in the town I was living in at the time, and there were roughly 6 candidates running there. I think there were 2 seats, and there's 6 candidates running, and we had 3 or 4 public debates um, that were televised on the local public television
Really?
station there in town. And then, of course, I conducted fundraisers where I had to go speak to certain groups and win them over, win that vote. And I didn't win. I suspect it's because I'm probably not a real good politician. I generally don't say what people want to hear, and that was probably what got me. But I'm honest, and I believe to succeed. Well, I don't know if you necessarily to succeed. I believe to even be able to play in that game of politics, you got to know that you got to do your homework. You got to know what's going on in your community. You just got to do the homework. and otherwise they'll devour you. And I didn't get devoured, but I didn't get the votes either. So.
Looking at your career and all the different hats that you wear, seems reasonable to say the communication, the ability to communicate, is a common thread through all of them, and being able to adapt to different communication styles in each of these areas.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this public utility job here that I have, a big percentage of it, of my duty is dealing with homeless camps on right of ways and pipelines, and so I'm dealing with people just at the lowest point in their lives, living in tents under bridges, that are methed out on fentanyl, and but I've learned that you got to compartmentalize this stuff here, So when I'm done with this, I have appointments later on today. One of my clients, I'll be meeting with him, talking with him, and he's at a different level. He has a Gulfstream 4 jet that we're going to go cruising around in next month. But I mean, you can see the spectrum here. It's crazy, but it humbles me too at the same time. And I like to think that I have the utmost respect for every human being out there when I make contact, and I treat everybody as the way I want to be treated. I just think it's that simple.
And I would imagine, kind of in this day and age, everybody has a camera. Every single person
Oh
has
my
a camera.
God, yes.
When you started in the business, nobody did. And kind of the whole Rodney King thing came about when somebody was filming that. And I imagine that has simply changed so much about police work, and knowing that
Oh
there are
yeah,
cameras out there. And most policemen have a camera on
that's
them
right.
as well, so that they can say, this is what I did. Nobody can claim what you said, but you properly communicating. I just got to believe it's even more important now than it ever was in the past. Last question. What advice would you give your younger self?
What advice I would give my younger self? Boy,
And look,
I would have said, have more kids. I only have 2 kids. I wish I had more kids at this point in life now. And I wish I would have bought and sold my primary residence every 3 to 4 years. I'd be a multi-millionaire by now if I did that, Matt. And
no.
so would you, and so would everybody else we know. Yeah, it's amazing, the wealth you can build from just your primary residence, as long as you don't fall in love with it. The key is to buy and sell that primary residence every 2 to 5 years, 5 years max. Just keep turning. Because
Is that because of California tax laws, or is
no,
that
it's federal. It's federal. So the first, if you're a single person, the first $250,000 of equity of profit is tax free. If you're married, the first $500,000 is tax free, both federal and state. And you can do this over and over again as long as you own or occupy the property for 2 years, and you can do it over and over and over again. So that would be the advice I would have given myself, and I would have. When I was at San Diego State, I would have advised myself, just buy anything. Don't rent. Don't stay in a dormitory. Just go rent or buy a crappy little condominium. That's where you start building your real estate portfolio. Start when you're young.
There you go. Cool. Made it this far. I just want to take a moment to thank you for listening all the way through, and to express my appreciation to you for following another episode of Verbal Impact. I want to thank today's guest, Bruce Lesser, with whom we discussed communications in a variety of fields: police, real estate, public office, and more. Don't forget to check out our various social media channels, including YouTube, under the name of Presentelligence. That's Presentelligence. Presentelligence.